This is SIG P365 380 versus SIG P365 9mm ballistic gel test comparison video 2, the follow-up. For today's video, we don't have any new footage to add, but we are going to flash back to some of the footage from last week and add some commentary and additional thought points on it. Let's start out by saying why we chose the two firearms that we chose for this test. Well, the simple reality is that happens to be the make model of firearm where we have both a 380 version and a 9mm version available for use on the channel. So that really cuts out a lot of the things, or yeah-buts, we'll say, that people could toss in like, oh, well, they were different make of firearm, or a different model of firearm, or they had different barrel lengths, or, well, now we're closer to 380 versus 9mm without some of the many things firearms related that are going to come into play. Now, while these firearms are the same make and model of firearm, are they identical otherwise for caliber? No, but they're close enough for this channel to work with, and I think that's what matters here. When we talk about the gel, we're going to hold up this mold, as I said. A lot of that has to do with that gel is incredibly tacky. If we took it out of the box and unwrapped it, insults would stick to it off the YouTube video and they would be showing up on your screen by now. Now let's move into analyzing some of the footage and adding our thought points onto it. For part one, let's talk about the depth of the rounds in the gel. It's going to be 9mm green screen test. I have no idea if this is going to work. Now, if we look at our projectiles as they are in the block, one thing noticeable right out the gate is up here towards the top you can see the ballistic tip from our 9mm Hornady XTP round is 1.5 inches past where the body of the projectile stopped. Now we also see that our projectiles for both the Hornady XTP and the Norma rounds were both stopped about the 10.5 to 11.5 range through our block. Very consistent results through that ammo in that regard. Now an interesting area is let's look over here at the wound channels that came through, and we see devastating expansion up here on our early Norma shot. That's incredible expansion, or wound channel expansion anyway, through here. Likely as a result of that incredible flower petal action that we see on the expansion of that round. Now another very interesting thing that I think we see in this image is let's look at the wound channels down here on the lower section of the gel. For both our Norma and our Hornady ammunition, we see evidence of the round spinning. We see a circular pattern through the wound channel here, very noticeable in our Norma wound channel, but also very noticeable in our Hornady wound channel. Now I think both of those things are very interesting, and we wouldn't be able to see that if we were looking at, say, just our meat target or just an exploded water jug with an expanded hollow point at the end. Well, I hope you found that as interesting as I did anyway. For both the Norma MHP and the Hornady Critical Defense, I'm going to say we had an average depth of 11 inches in the gel, which in our previous video I thought was very good. Now some people chimed in the comments, rightfully so, and they said that, say in the official FBI test, it needs to be 12 inches before they begin to consider that acceptable. Now let's go to our mold here, and I have put a blue line of tape, wrong side, here. This is 11 inches through the gel. I'm backwards because I'm looking at a mirror image or whatever on my screens, so I got to get used to that. So 11 inches is where we got. 12 inches, which would be on the other side of the tape, would be considered acceptable. Well, let's look at that in the context of a human. We'll use me, for example, on a straight through angle, which was what I was thinking of originally, right? If you think of it as, say, in a self-defense situation in the movies, you always shoot someone head on. You need a pretty deep target before 11 inches is through them, or say not into their vitals. I did not consider the sideways trajectory that you might actually end up hitting someone on. And as we see, at least for me, 11 inches is basically through me practically, maybe stopped at the rib on this side if I'm hit on that other side. Which in my, not an expert opinion, but thinking of innocent bystanders that could be past me, that seems pretty good in my not an expert book. But again, that's just my not an expert opinion, and this is just my one sample. And now let's try to do a quick green screen breakdown of our 380 results. This one might be a little tricky with how they're placed on the screen and how I can't see them while I'm moving, but let's give it the old college try. Here we go. Now on our, I'm going to start with an image of our Hornady ammunition because we got a very clear image on this one after the result. And as you can see, two of our projectiles of the 3 that we fired were captured in the gel. They were very clearly captured. We got a very good image of it here. We see decent hollow point expansion. I say decent. In the past I would have said very good, but this Norma is just like so good in comparison in that regard. But so we see good hollow point expansion. We also see that the round has started to tumble slightly at the end. The rubber ballistic tip on these did not separate like we saw in the 9mm, and as we can see, it's oriented, in this case, not in the direction that the projectile entered the gel body. Now, I think the more interesting part of this picture, and the reason that we included it, is if we look at the wound channel through the gel on both of these, you can clearly see where the projectile spun going through the gel by virtue of that spin imparted by the rifling. Now I'm going to switch over here and we're going to show the picture now that also includes the Norma ammunition. This is after we got home in the next day, so not quite as clear, and hopefully I'm in the right spot so you can see where the projectiles are in our gel here. And as we see, we have one of our Hornady was at a full foot into the gel, what might be considered very good. And then the other ones are about 10.5, 11 inches with our Norma sandwiched in between the two Hornady rounds. Now again, if we look over here at our wound channels from our Norma, we again see very good evidence of the expansion. It's very clear. And then we can also make out the spin on those rounds as they came through the gel, which is something, again, that I think we don't see, or at least we're not capable of making out when we do, say, a meat target or maybe a water jug test. So again, very neat results on our ballistic gel test shown in our pictures. Now another area where I'm curious to see if we have an influence on the depth of our projectiles is how the block shifted on impact, especially with our 9mm. Now I'm going to superimpose some video footage of what I'm talking about here, and you'll notice between the first and the third shot there was quite a bit of shift in where our block was on the table. And I think as you watch, you can see the shock wave as the round hits and then oscillates through the gel. And the gel, I think in that oscillation, I think it works itself. In slow-mo it looks slow, but in normal video it doesn't look that slow. But I think it oscillates and sort of caterpillars across the table a little bit. I have matted the before and after to try to give you an idea of the shift here. And I wonder if that movement and energy that's being oscillating the block translates into slightly less penetration than we would otherwise see if the block did not oscillate across the table slightly.
Are you hopping around like a doogs? Going all hoppity, hoppity, hoppity? Boss, I'm trying to find a good spot where your video doesn't keep me awake while I'm snoozing. Going all snoozing terrier mode.
Now another thing I'm going to mention is I think in the standard test, if you do things by the book, which we often don't on this channel, we sort of wing it, I think they do their test at 7 yards. We did ours at 5 yards, and I have a very simple explanation for that. I'm not a professional shooter, and I didn't want to Swiss cheese our block up, shooting it at 7 yards and missing or grazing it before we had good hits on the block. So I took 2 steps in, and we shot last week's video at 5 yards to increase the odds that we would have good hits on the block with the rounds captured by the block. And I think for the most part we had that. We did see a few shots left on the 380, and I think that was more me aiming left, trying to keep more of the block usable on the right side for 2 additional shots, and just got a little too left of what was usable. But in the future, I think we will be able to get more, say, squelched in on those, to where we keep all of our shots in the block better now that we know what to do. And for other firearms, we certainly will be taking, say, 2 steps back and being more in the official 7-yard range. I doubt we'll ever, or at least until we get to the point where we are not going to reuse the block, add something in front of the block like plywood or denim or something to see how that negatively affects the penetration of the rounds. But I think we're going to hold off until we are at the point where we're not going to reuse the gel, because I think when we get to the point of adding additional things in front of the gel, that's going to introduce foreign bodies that I may or may not be able to filter out, and then are going to diminish the clarity of our gel and then the usefulness of it on camera. We're going to move into part 2 of the video now. We're going to call that the projectiles in the block and how they expanded. Now you may see me occasionally refer to my notes here. We have some numbers and I didn't want to forget them, so I wrote them down. Starting with the Norma MHP, out of the 9mm, that's advertised on the block as a 108 grain projectile. Now I'm going to show you the picture of the projectiles on the screen now. And I dug those out of the block, which it felt very much like an adult game of operation. I'm glad that thing was not electrified, because otherwise it was an epic pain in the trying to cut those out of the block with how they expanded. It almost feels like it needs to be a 2-person job, 1 person to hold open the wound channel while the other person needle nose pliers out the projectile. It really opened my eyes to how terrible Battlefield Medic was probably in the 1800s. Ugh, gruesome. No wonder so many people died of infection. But anyway, we're segueing on to an awkward point. Let's get back to where we should be. The advertised weight of the projectile is 108 grains on the box. I had an average velocity of 108.1 grains, which if you don't add on the point, comes out to 108 grains, pretty spot on. Okay, so for the Hornady critical defense, the body of the projectile, I had it 113.6, 113.5, 113.8, which is, when you add in the 1.1 approximate weight of the ballistic tip, that gets you a little closer to the 115 grains advertised on the box. Now it's possible that some of the loss there is we could have lost some of the copper and lead of the projectile flaking off in the gel media. Now let's move to our 380 ammunition, starting with the Norma MHP, which has an advertised projectile weight of 85 grains on the box. Now we only recovered 2 of the 3 projectiles, well 4 actually, but on those projectiles the weight of them came out at 84.7 and 84.5 grains off my reloading scale. For our Hornady critical defense, again we only recovered 2 of the 3 projectiles fired. The ballistic tip was again 1.1 grains on both recovered, and both projectiles weighed in at 88.8 grains. When you add those 2 together, you get very close to the 90 grains advertised on the box. Now if we look at the expansion on these projectiles in both 9mm and 380, we see that there is a very, very huge difference in the expansion shown on the projectiles, and a lot of that is probably they are designed to be that way. For the Norma MHP and 9mm, our expansion achieved looks nigh indistinguishable from what is shown on the box. We basically recreated the marketing material, and I never expected we would do that. Now I suspect going through a body that is more than just gel, that you might even see those tines break off. Now for our Hornady critical defense, we see some nice expansion on the mushrooming, but it looks nowhere near as extreme or devastating or scary, or choose your word here to describe the difference between the Hornady and the Norma on those projectile results. They're designed to be different, no doubt, though I think the end result would be very similar. Both would be very devastating on their intended target, And I think that's true in both 380 and 9mm. Now we do see the 380 projectiles, they are smaller, they have less mass behind them, less material to work with, so you have a projectile that is slightly smaller in terms of the mushrooming or say the devastating tine expansion when compared to 9mm, but I think both still show excellent performance for a 380 personal defense, almost pocket carry pistol.
There you go. Oh, you need a biscuit ditty too, huh, Fred? You just chomp them on down, huh? You put all pa-chomp, pa-chewy chomp. The biscuit ditties get eaten down. Okay, fellas. We're almost done. We're almost done.
We're calling this part 3, our final thoughts. I think among the many things shown in this video, one of them is why the Hornady Critical Defense continues to be one of our favorite ammos to use in this channel. We see very good accuracy, very good reliability, and in my not an expert opinion, good performance out of it. And it's ammo that's always performed for me that, well, I have confidence and comfort in it. Now another thing that I think this video has shown, among many things, is, well, that maybe the marketing material on this Norma MHP ammo isn't all fluff. We certainly were able to duplicate the hollow point expansion seen here, in fact to a scary degree. Now another thing I want to mention is, because we've now over the summer fired this ammunition out of numerous firearms, many days, I've shot it, 2 days a month at least, out of firearms of various makes, models, barrel lengths. It even says on here, recommended for pistol carbines, full-size compact, subcompact, and ultra-compact pistols. Well, I don't know what ultra-compact is. I don't think I have an ultra-compact 9mm. Smallest I would have, let's say, be my Kimber Micro 9 Nightfall. But I've fired it from every 9mm I have between my Kimber 9 Nightfall and my Scorpion carbine. Zero issues out of any of them. And in fact, I've had very good accuracy and reliability out of all of them. Very good. Such that I've said in, I think, the last video that we posted prior to the Ballistics one, that I was looking forward to seeing how the ammo did in a ballistics gel or water jug or meat target test, because so far it has been very good and, well, eye-opening. And, well, I stand by that. For me so far, this Norma ammunition, it has performed and performed very well, and I think I'm going to continue buying it, especially when it's on sale. Is thunderstorm right out there? You gonna woofity at him? Why don't you give me the old big barks? Why don't you give him one of the old big barks? Oh, you told him, huh? Don't forget to like and subscribe so Freddy gets his biscuits.